Hey everybody, I'm Brandon Heffernan. There was a little bit of trouble recording the full session earlier, so I'm doing a bit of a recap now. Mostly, I just wanted to go over some of the questions that I was getting through the poll and that was received in the showcase earlier. Basically, a lot of people have a lot of similar questions as far as what an engineer does, how that differs from mixing, mastering, and where a producer kind of falls in with all that. So I kind of wanted to give my general overview, and then I invite anyone to, of course, add their opinion to it. There's a lot of gray area, and I know a lot of us wear all of these hats at the same time. So the more that we can talk about the crossover and just basically educate everyone on the benefit of each, I think the more knowledge we can all have with it. A mix engineer is someone that you're going to work with at the most basic level. That's someone who's going to get the first recording from the ground. Like if you're working with instruments, even synths, sometimes they're the ones that's going to make sure you get a clean recording going into the box and make sure that everything is kind of appropriately put together, either when it's going to a mastering engineer or if they're mixing it for, say, radio or something of the like. A mix engineer is able to do the job of mixing where they get it to, let's say, radio quality. I know that can be kind of a loose interpretation, but when I think of radio quality, that's something that's going to be loud enough and mixed well where you're going to be happy with the outcome and okay with it playing on the radio in any city. Most of the time, so something good for like average car speakers, let's say average to like pro audio car speakers that you'll find in a lot of new cars these days. So with that, there's kind of two different frames of mind when that mix engineer is sending it out. If you're doing it for radio, you're kind of mixing it to a certain volume, and that's just kind of where it's going to be. If you're sending it to a mastering engineer, you're going to want that volume to be a lot lower. It's still going to be the 2-track that goes to them. You typically aren't going to send stems, but you're going to want it to be around like -6, -4 dB. I've even had mastering engineers ask for it at -10 dB. That just gives them some headroom to kind of play and bring out the emotions of the track. And that's where I think of the difference between the mixing engineer and the mastering engineer. A mastering engineer is someone who, basically is going to try to make that emotion shine. There's specific mastering plugins and audio hardware that you can use that's going to kind of play with the frequencies in a way that kind of expand the dimension and kind of give it a fuller, brighter sound. When I work with clients, I'll usually ask them to tell me, when they want something mastered, would you want it, tell me if you want it purple or yellow, like whatever adjectives come to mind. That's what I think of the mastering engineer's job is to do, is to kind of do that creative process to make something sound like spaghetti or, you kind of see where I'm going with that. The mastering engineer kind of has, if they're getting a piece of marble, they're the one that's going to try to turn it into David or just like this really nice statue. And that's all per what the artist wants to throw at them. Okay, so where does the producer fit in with all this? The producer, I think, is, it's going to change per context. That's the easiest way to put it for a producer. But I think the easiest blanket statement is to say that a producer is someone who's going to make the artist sound their best. So in the context of a recording studio, a producer doesn't need to have musical knowledge or even engineering knowledge for that matter. There's someone that is either going to be in the room with the artist, maybe they're sitting with the engineer, but they're the one communicating with the artist. They're the one that's going to get the artist to feel comfortable and to get them to really sound like themselves when they're trying to record. The engineer will typically just kind of stay silent in those moments and just do their job. If I'm the engineer in that situation, I'll just kind of, just take the orders, you do the things on the side, and you just capture the best sound that they're trying to create. A producer then, take that a step further. If you're working as a Beatmaker type producer, that's someone who, again, if you're creating beats for an artist, you're trying to make them sound as great as you can. But that kind of production is a whole different level. That takes a lot of musical and technical skill, and it's a wide range of what you can do as a musical producer these days. You can do it all in software, you can do it all in hardware, you can do it just with instruments. There really isn't any creative limits to how that transcends, I think. Personally, I use a mix of both hardware and software. I tend to go more to the hardware because I am stubborn, but I try to use everything at my fingertips. Like if you're producing for an artist specifically, you're going to try to make something, that's going to cater to their sound. There are producers that are able just to throw their beats out on there and do make money that way, and that's really awesome too. But me personally, I've found that I'll kind of reach out to artists specifically and try to create something that kind of matches their style. So the benefits of hiring the engineer. For the mastering engineer, it really is going to take your sound to that next level. I think of it as the difference between releasing a full project versus releasing a single. If you just want a single out there, like you can just get away with the mix engineer and the radio mix. There are a lot of mix engineers that are really solid and can get that. But I also feel that if someone is claiming to be a mastering engineer, that's someone that's really put in the time and work and effort. And if they're going to offer their services, more often than not, you are going to get a better product. After a while, there are diminishing returns too. There's a lot of argument there. Like you do have to kind of find the right engineer for you. It's not like one specific mastering engineer is going to be the best for every kind of genre. You're going to want to look up what these guys have worked with in the past, and that does kind of help, dictate if you should work with them or not. Let's see. I hope I answered that. That does add the value, but I absolutely say that you should work with mix engineers or mastering engineers when you can afford it and when you can. Mix engineers, especially too, can really just help add a lot of sound if you don't know what you're doing yourself. Some people can get away with the bedroom recordings, and you're just going for really lo-fi stuff. And sometimes it's just a great learning process doing that. But a mix engineer is going to help you get a lot farther, a lot faster. Let's see. An artist can best prepare their music to work with an engineer. Well, again, the difference with mixing and mastering. With mastering, typically it's going to be the 2-track. And I do kind of think, I try to send my stuff out around -6 dB if it's going to a mastering engineer. That, the idea is just to give them the headroom to play around with the track and make it sound better, because they will be able to add that volume back. That's not a problem. For a mix engineer, doing stems, it definitely helps if it's a different recording engineer from mixing engineer. So the stems mean that each individual track is going to be recorded separately from the start to finish of the track, so it all just drops into the time frame for the or into the DAW for the mix engineer, and they can work with it that much easier. So really, that's the best way to prepare, I would say, is just make sure you have the stems. That's something you're going to want anyway, because as you're getting more into the sync world, you're obviously going to want your stems available. You're going to want them in case you ever need to remix those or to master those or to do anything to make them shine or sparkle a bit more. Realistic expectations for working with an engineer. I would say be as upfront as possible. There's so many artists that kind of go in with a head full of expectations that they don't communicate with the engineer. And that's just kind of setting yourself up for failure, honestly. The more that you can communicate, even if it sounds abstract, try to get those ideas across to the engineer. They're going to help you get to that end goal, or hopefully if they can't, they'll point you in the right direction to who can. It's a similar kind of thing. Mix engineers, you're going to want to find the one that works best with you. Or if you're working with the producer, the one that works best with both of you. You chose your producer for a reason, so this mix engineer has to jive with both of y'all. But yeah, the most realistic expectation, like most people, I don't know, it's a wide variety, who's to say, on average. Like, music is such a kind of wild game. But realistically, just be upfront. Mention stems in the beginning so they just have the DAW ready, to record those stems. It'll be that much easier on the front end. You'll get them on the back end. And, if you mention up front, possibly they won't even charge you extra for them, because it's just like that much easier to set up and go. But who knows? Everyone's different. But yeah, realistically, the more questions you can ask the engineer, the better. Typically, we're open books and we want to help you, so be vocal, be upfront, and if someone's being kind of dodgy, then maybe that's the motive to move on to someone else. Anyway, I hope this has been informative and not too much of a rant. Again, my name is Brandon. Feel free to reach me in the chat or send me a DM or anything if you have any other questions, want to be a part of future showcases. And I hope that this short recording kind of makes up for the lack of being able to record earlier. Thanks again, and y'all take care.